Welcome to the Timeless Tales Library, where each story is a soft key that unlocks the quiet spaces of your imagination. I'm Oliver, your host for the evening, and tonight I'll be sharing a gentle tale meant to calm your thoughts and carry you peacefully towards sleep. This haven of restful stories is brought to life by listeners like you. If you've found solace here, please consider subscribing to help us continue weaving these serene narratives. As you settle in, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, letting me know where you're listening from, and share a place you dream of a story taking you. Perhaps a lighthouse on a windswept cliff, a lantern-lit street in Kyoto, a cozy bookshop in the rain, or a meadow beneath the northern lights. Your dreams keep our little library warm and glowing. Tonight's story is about a weary traveler discovers a mysterious island where a reclusive count has spent decades creating elaborate gardens and workshops dedicated to crafting perfect gifts for strangers, transforming his solitude into a gentle mission of anonymous kindness that blooms across the world like seeds on the wind. Now, close your eyes and take a long, quiet breath. Tonight, your journey leads to the Lantern Hall in the Timeless Tales Library. Lanterns hover above every shelf, glowing with warm, colorful light. Each lantern illuminates a story, and the reflection of their glow shimmers across polished wood floors. The gentle scent of parchment and wax fills the air, soft and comforting. Sink into your bed, your cozy corner in this luminous hall. Release your hands, your shoulders, your toes. Let the gentle sway of the lantern's glow lull your body and mind into stillness. Follow the path of light along the shelves. Let each lantern's story drift into your imagination, carrying you softly into the calm of night. The Count of Monte Cristo, Isle of Gentle Fortunes. The morning mist clung to the Mediterranean waters like silk scarves forgotten by dancing spirits, and through it, Captain Moreau guided his small sailing vessel toward an island that appeared on no official charts. His passenger, a travel writer named Celeste, stood at the bow with her notebook clutched against her chest, watching the mysterious landmass emerge from the pearl-grey dawn. "You're certain this place exists?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder as the island revealed itself to be far more beautiful than the old fisherman in Marseille had described. Terraced gardens cascaded down hillsides in ribbons of lavender and rose, while white stone buildings crowned the highest peaks like scattered pearls against the azure sky. "As certain as one can be about places that exist in the margins of maps," Captain Moreau replied with a gentle smile. He was an elderly man whose eyes held the calm wisdom of someone who had sailed every sea and learned to trust in mysteries. "The island of Monte Cristo has many secrets, but this particular secret has been calling to me for months now." As they drew closer, Celeste could see that the buildings were not ruins, as she had expected, but perfectly maintained structures that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Gardens bloomed in impossible combinations, cherry blossoms growing beside autumn maples, spring daffodils nodding to summer roses, all thriving in harmonious defiance of seasons. Birds of brilliant plumage flitted from branch to branch, their songs intertwining with the delicate melodies of fountains hidden among the terraces. Each note seemed to carry with it a sense of calm, like an invisible hand smoothing away the rough edges of thought. A small dock materialized from the mist, its wooden planks weathered to silver, and adorned with lanterns that burned with flames of different colors. As Captain Moreau secured the boat, a figure appeared at the end of the pier, a tall man in a coat the color of deep ocean, his hair silver white, despite a face that seemed touched by eternal youth. "Welcome," the stranger said, his voice carrying the warmth of honey and old wine. "I am Edmund, and I have been expecting you." Celeste felt no alarm at this greeting, only a curious sense of recognition, as if she were meeting someone from a half-remembered dream. "Expecting us? But we came here on impulse, following stories that might have been legends. The best journeys begin with impulse," Edmund replied, offering his arm to help her from the boat, "and legends often contain more truth than facts. Come, let me show you something beautiful." He led them up a path paved with stones that seemed to capture and reflect the colors of whatever grew nearby. Rose pink beneath flowering bushes, leaf green under arbors heavy with grapes, sky blue where it wound past fountains filled with water clear as crystal. Celeste noticed that each fountain played a different melody, their combined songs creating a symphony that seemed designed to ease every worry from the mind. She stopped for a moment to watch the water, noticing the way sunlight caught in the droplets, scattering tiny rainbows across her notebook and the edges of her coat. The sound seemed alive, almost sentient, as though the fountains themselves were breathing in tandem with the island. As they continued, the path opened onto a small clearing where an ancient olive tree spread its silver-green leaves in a perfect canopy. Beneath its boughs, a carpet of tiny, star-shaped flowers swayed with the breeze. Edmund knelt briefly to touch the roots, and Celeste noticed a faint shimmer around them, as if the tree's life force were visible to those willing to see. "This olive tree is older than any map of the region," Edmund said softly. "It remembers the stories of every traveler who has ever sought solace here, and sometimes it whispers them back to the world through those who listen." Nearby, a series of small workshops were tucked into the hillside, each glowing faintly with lantern light. Inside, translucent artisans bent over their work, crafting delicate objects with an intensity that seemed almost sacred. One shaped a miniature wind chime whose tones echoed the laughter of children long grown. Another wove threads of sunlight into a tapestry that shimmered with fleeting images of kindness. Celeste marveled at the dedication in every movement, the devotion not to profit or recognition, but to the subtle enchantments that made life more bearable, more beautiful. "The island has a way of revealing itself slowly," Edmund said, noticing her gaze. "Patience and attention unlock wonders that hurried eyes would miss. Each stone, each leaf, each note of music has a story to tell if you are willing to listen." Celeste felt herself drawn into the rhythm of the island, the gentle cadence of footsteps on colored stone, the symphony of fountains, the subtle hum of wind through flowering branches. It was as though she had stepped into a space where time softened, where each moment lingered long enough to be truly savored. And for the first time in many months, the worries that had crowded her thoughts seemed to dissolve, replaced by a quiet sense of wonder that made her heart beat slow to match the pulse of this hidden world. "How long have you lived here?" she asked as they climbed higher, passing workshops where she glimpsed artisans bent over their crafts, though the artisans themselves seemed oddly translucent, as if they were made of concentrated attention rather than flesh. "Time moves differently on this island," Edmund said, pausing to deadhead roses that bloomed in shades she had no names for. "I came here long ago seeking solitude after disappointments in the world beyond. I thought I wanted to be alone forever. And now? Now I have learned that solitude is best when it serves others." They reached a villa whose architecture defied easy description. It seemed to be part classical Roman, part Arabian palace, part fairy tale castle, all blended together with such harmony that the eye accepted it as naturally as one accepts a sunset's impossible colors. Terraces wrapped around the structure at different levels, each devoted to a different craft or pleasure. Gardens where flowers grew in mathematical spirals, workshops where music boxes played melodies that sounded like trapped laughter, studios where paintings painted themselves while viewers watched. "Welcome to the Villa of Gentle Vengeance," Edmund said, and at Celeste's questioning look he chuckled. "A jest on my part. I once planned terrible revenges against those who wronged me. Now I practice the most terrible revenge of all, overwhelming kindness." Inside, the villa was a maze of comfortable rooms filled with the most extraordinary projects. In one chamber, Edmund showed them a massive loom where threads of actual moonbeams were being woven into cloth that would make its wearer feel forever cherished. In another, a team of those translucent artisans worked at tiny desks, crafting music boxes that would appear mysteriously on the doorsteps of people who needed to remember that they were loved. "Who are they?" Celeste whispered, watching the ethereal workers with fascination. "Memories given form," Edmund explained. "Every act of kindness I witnessed in my youth, before anger clouded my vision. I thought I had forgotten them, but they were here all along, waiting for me to remember that goodness exists." The villa opened onto a wide courtyard, where a fountain poured water that glimmered with the light of captured sunsets. Around it, flowers of impossible colors grew: violets, the shade of twilight, roses that glowed like embers, lilies whose petals refracted sunlight into miniature rainbows. A gentle breeze carried scents that seemed to evoke forgotten joys: the first taste of ripe figs in summer, the smell of wet earth after a spring rain, the comfort of warm bread cooling on a windowsill. Celeste inhaled deeply, feeling her chest expand with a peaceful, almost sacred calm. In a sun-filled conservatory, they found tables laden with the most unusual gifts. There were pocket watches that ran backward, allowing their owners to relive their happiest moments. Snow globes contained miniature scenes of comfort, a fireside reading nook, a garden where eternal spring reigned, a kitchen filled with the scent of baking bread. Bottles held captured laughter, to be opened on days when joy felt impossible to find. Crystal jars contained tiny glowing seeds, said to sprout in a dream if planted with hope, while delicate boxes held single feathers that, if carried, reminded the bearer to take flight in moments of doubt. Each item goes to someone who needs it, Edmund explained, running his fingers over a scarf that seemed to be knitted from clouds. I have ways of knowing who requires what. Dreams tell me things. The wind brings whispers. Sometimes a seabird arrives with a message written in its own language of flight patterns. Celeste picked up a small glass sphere that contained what looked like dancing lights. As she held it, a profound sense of peace washed over her, as if every anxiety she had ever carried was being gently dissolved. She felt herself sink into the quiet, luminous rhythm of the villa, a sense of wonder knitting every loose thought into a coherent tapestry of serenity. This is incredible. You're like a benevolent spirit. Once I was very much the opposite, Edmund said quietly. I spent years planning elaborate schemes to repay cruelty with cruelty. But when I came here, when I finally had the time and space to think clearly, I realized that revenge is a chain that binds the avenger as tightly as the target. True freedom came only when I chose to break that chain. Captain Moreau, who had been quietly observing, nodded thoughtfully. The old fisherman who told us about this place, he said you once sent a boat to his village during a terrible storm. Food and blankets appeared overnight, enough for everyone. Did they? Edmund said with innocent eyes that fooled no one. How fortunate for them. They spent the day exploring the island's wonders. Edmund showed them a library where books wrote themselves based on the dreams of their future readers. Each volume was alive in its own way. Letters lifted off the pages and hovered in the air, forming words that shimmered with the reader's unspoken hopes. In another room, a garden responded to touch and thought. Brushing past a bed of flowers caused petals to shimmer with a soft light, or a vine to curl toward the one who paused near it. A workshop housed musical instruments that crafted themselves, each destined to find its way to hands that would coax healing melodies from their strings. The translucent artisans moved gracefully among them, occasionally pausing to bow or gesture as though acknowledging visitors, though they were never distracted from their silent, sacred work. Celeste walked slowly, absorbing the infinite detail of every object, every sound, every scent. She felt as if she had stepped into a living meditation, a place where time itself was reshaped to allow one to witness beauty in its purest form. Even the sunlight, filtered through colored glass and curling leaves, seemed to carry warmth directly to the heart. As she watched Edmund tending the gardens and artisans, she realized that the villa itself was a conduit of his transformation, a place where kindness had been given a physical presence so tangible it could not be denied. In a grove of olive trees whose leaves shimmered silver and gold, they found a circle of benches where Edmund liked to sit in the evenings. "This is where I do my planning," he said, "not schemes of revenge anymore, but designs for joy. I consider each person who appears in my dreams or meditation, and I imagine what might bring light to their particular darkness. It must be lonely sometimes," Celeste observed, settling onto a bench carved from what appeared to be petrified starlight. "It was for many years," Edmund admitted, but I have learned that the loneliness of creating beauty for others is far sweeter than the isolation of nurturing hatred. And I am not truly alone. Every gift I send carries with it a connection, invisible threads linking my heart to hearts around the world. As if summoned by his words, birds began to gather in the olive trees, not ordinary birds, but creatures with feathers that caught light, like prisms, and voices that harmonized in impossibly complex melodies. Some, Edmund explained, carried messages to him about people in need. Others delivered his gifts with supernatural precision, always ensuring they arrived at exactly the right moment. "The birds are bound to me by choice," he said, extending a hand for a particularly radiant creature to perch upon. "They have learned that carrying kindness is the most fulfilling work in all the world." The breeze stirred the olive branches, and Celeste felt a quiet thrill as dozens of birds circled above, their reflections dancing across the silvery leaves. She noticed how each movement, each song, seemed to echo the subtle rhythm of the island itself, as if every living thing were part of a larger, harmonious design. Some birds hovered near her, their delicate plumage refracting the light into tiny rainbows on her notebook. She found herself imagining the hands of distant strangers opening the gifts these birds would soon deliver, and a strange warmth filled her chest. As evening approached, Edmund led them to a circular chamber at the villa's highest point. The room was filled with pools of water that reflected not the ceiling above, but images from around the world, windows into the lives of people who had received his gifts. In one pool, they saw an elderly woman in Prague opening a music box and beginning to dance for the first time since her husband's death. In another, a young man in Tokyo discovered a book that contained exactly the words he needed to forgive himself for old mistakes. A child in a tiny village opened a jar of laughter, and for a moment their giggles echoed across the room, as if the sound had traveled through the ether to reach Edmund's sanctuary. "This is how I know my work matters," Edmund said softly. "Not through gratitude, most never know where their gifts come from, but through witnessing the moment when someone remembers that magic exists in their life." Celeste found herself crying gentle tears as she watched story after story unfold in the crystal waters. How do you choose? There must be so much need in the world. "I follow joy," Edmund said simply, "not dramatic happiness, but the quiet joy that comes from small perfectnesses, a cup of tea at exactly the right temperature, a letter that arrives on the day you most need to hear from an old friend, a stranger's smile when you're feeling invisible. These tiny magics add up to lives worth living." He guided her gaze to a pool where a woman struggling with loss received a single hand-stitched blanket, its pattern reflecting her favorite childhood flowers. Another pool showed a young boy, lonely in a crowded city, discovering a tiny carved animal that became his constant companion, teaching him patience and hope. Each image seemed to vibrate softly, carrying with it the quiet pulse of human resilience. That night, they dined on a terrace overlooking the entire island, the meal appearing as if conjured from the air, though Celeste suspected the translucent servants were responsible. their movements so graceful they seemed like personified breezes. Lanterns floated like suspended stars, casting golden light over the table. The breeze carried scents from the island gardens, roses, herbs, and the faint perfume of distant blossoms. The food tasted like memories of the most comforting meals she had ever eaten, each bite carrying flavors that made her feel deeply at home. A plate of honey-drizzled figs evoked afternoons spent reading in sunlit windows, while a bowl of warm, creamy soup recalled family dinners she had long forgotten. Edmund watched her reaction quietly, a faint smile tracing the edges of his lips. "Food can be a gift," he said, "not for sustenance alone, but for remembrance. The right meal can remind someone of love they thought lost." As they ate, the birds returned to perch along the terrace railing, their iridescent feathers flickering in the lantern light. Their songs blended with the soft hum of the fountains below, creating a living symphony that seemed designed for no one but those present, yet somehow embracing the world beyond. Celeste felt the rhythm of the island seep into her very bones, a gentle insistence that life could always be transformed, no matter how small the gesture, no matter how remote the place. Evening deepened, and a crescent moon rose over the horizon, silvering the gardens, the villa, and the far-off waves. The island exhaled a quiet, encompassing peace. Celeste leaned back, closing her eyes, and felt as if she could hear the echoes of every act of kindness Edmund had ever made, threads of joy weaving across oceans, touching hearts she would never meet, yet feeling intimately connected to all of them. Celeste lingered on the terrace, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea that seemed to taste of the night itself, hints of jasmine, honey, and the faint salt of distant seas. The stars above reflected not only in the pools Edmund had shown her earlier, but in her own widening sense of wonder, as if each point of light carried a fragment of the island's magic. She realized she had never truly felt so seen, so quietly understood by a world that usually demanded haste and distraction. Here every detail mattered, every thought had weight, and every intention carried with it a chance to ripple outward beyond the immediate and into the lives of others. "You know," she said softly, "I think I understand now why the island feels alive." Edmund tilted his head, the corners of his eyes crinkling with gentle amusement. "It is alive," he said simply, "not merely with plants and water and wind, but with attention, with purpose, with kindness. Every act you witness, every thought that dwells here, strengthens it. Every person touched by its influence contributes to its heartbeat. The island is a mirror, Celeste, reflecting not what the world demands of us, but what it can become when care is given freely." She closed her eyes and let the sound of the villa's song wash over her. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, a low vibration beneath the ordinary sounds of night, but soon she noticed its rhythm. It was the rhythm of uncounted small joys, a child laughing, a bird alighting on a windowsill, a stranger returning a lost wallet, a letter arriving in perfect timing. The music wove through the air and around her chest, filling spaces, she hadn't known were empty. "I came here for a story," she whispered, more to herself than to Edmund, "but I think I've found something far greater." "And what is that?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. The understanding that even the smallest gesture, an unnoticed smile, a hand held at the right moment, a word whispered to someone when they are alone, can have consequences larger than we imagine. That love, properly directed, can outlast any bitterness. Edmund nodded, his expression thoughtful. It is easy to believe that grand gestures are required to change the world. In youth, I believed it. I thought that vengeance, cunning, or wealth were the instruments of influence. I spent decades honing those tools, convinced that satisfaction lay in the public acknowledgement of my rightness. But what I have learned here, what I have discovered in the quiet hours of this island, is that transformation is often invisible, subtle, and private. The smallest kindness, given without expectation of reward, can create ripples far larger than the mightiest storm of anger. Celeste shifted slightly, watching the fireflies drift lazily around the terrace. Their soft light shimmered across the marble and the hedges, creating trails of sparkling gold that seemed to stretch to the horizon. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "if people even notice the things you do for them?" Edmund smiled, and the twinkle in his eyes reminded her of stars caught in crystal water. "Most do not. And that is precisely why it works. Gratitude is not the measure of kindness, change is. Some will never know why a small miracle appeared in their lives, or who it came from, but that does not lessen its power. You see, the true impact is in the shift that occurs within them. It is in the softening of a heart, the quiet hope that returns to a life, the courage to face another day. I give, and I vanish from the story, but the story itself endures." She let the words settle around her, imagining the lives he had touched, countless, scattered across continents, each person unknowingly connected to the gentle rhythm of his deeds. The thought was almost dizzying in its beauty. "It feels infinite," she breathed. "In a way it is," Edmund said, "but infinity does not frighten me here. The island teaches patience, it teaches observation, it teaches trust in the slow unfolding of good." He leaned back, eyes tracing the horizon where sky met sea. "I watch, I send, I listen, and I wait. And sometimes the waiting itself is part of the gift." Celeste glanced at him, seeing not the man alone in a villa of wonders, but a conduit through which countless moments of hope and joy flowed. "Do you ever feel the loneliness, though?" she asked again, her voice almost lost beneath the soft song of the villa. "It is not absent," Edmund admitted. "There are nights when the weight of awareness presses against me, nights when I remember that not every life can be healed, that not every sorrow can be soothed, but I have discovered a companion in the very act of giving. The island itself becomes a witness, the fireflies become couriers of memory, the waters of the pools reflect continuity. Loneliness is tempered when purpose is present. I am never truly alone when my thoughts are aligned with the welfare of others." The stars above seemed to intensify their sparkle, and for a moment the sky felt like a living extension of the villa. Celeste thought she could see constellations forming delicate patterns, as if each twinkle corresponded to a gift sent, a heart softened, a despair lifted. The rhythm of the night felt almost musical, a quiet counterpoint to Edmund's reflections. "You could stay," Edmund offered quietly, returning her gaze to him. "There is always room here for those who understand that true wealth lies not in gold, but in the ability to give joy to others." Celeste's mind wandered. She imagined herself walking among the translucent artisans, learning their ways of careful attention. She imagined sending gifts across seas, reaching people she would never meet, altering the course of small, personal worlds in subtle yet profound ways. She imagined evenings like this, sharing the quiet satisfaction of unseen deeds, watching the stars and the fireflies and the gentle swaying of the trees, knowing that somewhere a heart was lighter because of her efforts. "But my stories," she said finally, the hesitation in her voice betraying her uncertainty. "I think my gift is different. I think I'm meant to carry stories back to the world." Edmund's smile was patient, understanding. "Then let this place shape the way you tell them. Let the island's lessons seep into your words, so that even in absence, your stories carry the rhythm of care, the resonance of small, deliberate acts of kindness. Every reader who opens your work can, if only for a moment, feel the quiet magic that exists here." Celeste felt a calm resolve settle over her, a certainty that she could carry both her own life and the lessons of this hidden island forward. She would write differently, with eyes attuned to the imperceptible currents of empathy, with words that might leave unseen ripples of comfort and hope in the hearts of her readers. And perhaps, in some mysterious way, those ripples would connect back to the quiet work of Edmund and the island, closing a circle of kindness that stretched across oceans and generations. As the night deepened further, the fireflies' glow seemed to merge with the stars, creating a continuum of light that wrapped the villa, the gardens, and the surrounding sea in an embrace of luminescent quietude. The villa itself thrummed softly beneath her feet, a reminder that every brick, every beam, every fountain, and every pool existed not just as architecture, but as a living testament to the possibility of change. Celeste allowed herself to be lulled by it, the song of the island seeping into her soul, and she realized, with a gentle thrill, that she had already begun to carry part of it with her, wherever she might go. And in that moment, suspended between the wonder of the present and the infinite possibilities of unseen lives, Celeste understood the truest lesson of the island, that the quiet, patient cultivation of joy, when guided by intention and care, could create ripples beyond reckoning, touching hearts, transforming despair, and quietly, irrevocably shaping the world. But she thought of her own life, of the stories she had yet to write, of the readers who might find comfort in her words. "I think my gift is different," she said finally. "I think I'm meant to carry stories back to the world." "Then let this story live in your heart," Edmund said with understanding. Let it change the way you see the world, so that when you write with eyes that have witnessed how beautiful the world becomes when it is touched by selfless love. The next morning, as Captain Moreau prepared the boat for departure, Edmund presented Celeste with a gift of her own, a fountain pen that seemed to be carved from a single piece of ocean blue crystal. For stories that heal, he said simply. Celeste turned the pen over in her hands, marveling at the way the light refracted through it, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the deck. It's perfect, she whispered. I'll treasure it always. Not as a treasure, Edmund corrected gently, but as a tool, a reminder that words have power beyond mere letters on a page. Use it wisely, and remember, stories are gifts, and gifts are stories. As they sailed away from the island, Celeste watched it fade back into mist and legend, feeling a strange tug in her chest. The terraces, the glowing gardens, the translucent artisans, the pools reflecting distant lives, everything seemed to retreat, yet the imprint of it lingered, like the faint echo of a song she had not yet learned the words to. The morning sun glinted off the waves, and she realized that she carried something more valuable than any treasure, a vision of what a heart could become when it chose love over bitterness, creation over destruction, quiet kindness over dramatic gestures. Back in Marseille, life slowly returned to its familiar rhythms, yet everything had changed. Sitting at her writing desk, Celeste found the fountain pen eager to glide across the paper, almost as if it were alive. Words flowed with a gentle insistence, unhurried but precise, carrying within them a warmth she had never managed to conjure before. Characters in her stories seemed to breathe with empathy, plots unfolded with subtle magic, and every sentence bore the quiet power of hope. Readers wrote back to her, often noting an inexplicable calm, a sense of peace, or the mysterious lifting of a worry they had carried for years. Sometimes, late at night, she would pause to close her eyes, inhaling the scent of jasmine and sea salt that seemed to drift through her apartment as if carried from the Mediterranean breeze itself. In those moments, she felt the presence of the island, the sway of olive trees, the faint hum of the villa, the gentle twinkling of fireflies. It was a presence that reminded her that kindness, once set in motion, traveled farther than one could measure, crossing oceans, cities, and invisible borders of time and circumstance. On occasion, her readers would write of strange happenings, perfect flowers appearing on trying days, letters arriving at the precise moment when they were most needed, books opening to the exact passage that offered solace or guidance. They never connected these gifts to her stories, yet Celeste understood in her quiet heart. She was part of an endless chain, a delicate web of kindness stretching from heart to heart across the world, linking people in ways they could neither see nor fully comprehend. Each story she wrote became a silent envoy, carrying the subtle magic she had witnessed on the island. Over time, Celeste noticed that the act of writing itself began to heal her in ways she had not anticipated. Pain and worry, once so consuming, seemed to dissolve into her words, transformed into comfort for others. She discovered joy in the quiet moments, the moment a story reached a reader who needed it most, the gentle satisfaction of a paragraph that captured truth, or a simple sentence that sparked hope. Each act of writing became a meditation, a chance to practice the same philosophy she had learned from Edmund, that the smallest gestures, whether in words or deeds, can ripple outward with unimaginable effect. The crystal pen became a talisman, not only for her stories but for her own growth. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever the world outside felt harsh or unkind, she would hold it in her hand and feel the subtle vibration of the island's magic, a quiet insistence that goodness, patience, and care mattered. It was a reminder that every choice to comfort, to understand, to create rather than destroy was a victory in itself, an ongoing act of gentle rebellion against despair. And sometimes, when the moon hung low over the rooftops of Marseille, Celeste would step onto her balcony and imagine a distant island drifting in a silver haze. She could almost hear the faint hum of the villa's song, the whisper of wind through gardens, and the harmonious voices of birds that carried messages across the seas. She knew Edmund was there, continuing his work with patient dedication, and she felt profoundly connected to it all, a living thread in the endless tapestry of quiet generosity. The true revenge, she had learned, was not against any enemy, but against despair itself, and that revenge was won not through grand schemes or dramatic confrontations, but through the patient daily practice of believing that every person deserved to wake up to a world made slightly more beautiful by love. As she began her next story, her hand steady and sure, Celeste realized that she had been given not merely a pen, but a way to participate in the transformation of the world. Each word she wrote, each story shared, was a gift that might reach someone in the darkest hour, reminding them that unseen hands cared, that invisible hearts hoped, and that gentle kindness could, in its own quiet, unstoppable way, make the world whole again. And so, she wrote, each day, each night, aware that she was no longer merely a storyteller. She was a participant in a vast, invisible network of care, a chain of light stretching from a hidden island to the hearts of strangers, and perhaps, through them, to the entire world.